Sustainability and resilience is absolutely the number one issue facing our food system. We saw in the pandemic that farmers markets in Missouri were able to quickly pivot and respond to need for food. The way we've organized some of our food system into these very large production units, like industrial sized livestock facilities, very large processing plants, we saw those kind of have a hiccup, especially at the beginning of the pandemic.
We've shown how well we perform under stress. During COVID, we never missed a lick. This is this year's calf crop right here. These are the Wagyu Angus calves. I mean, from a carbon perspective, we've got to be very, very negative. I mean, we don't have the transport on live animals. We're rotationally grazing our pastures. We're trying to add all the value we can and keep as much of it here on the farm as we can, as far as slaughter waste, nutrients, and all of that to rebuild our soils. This is so much the opposite of the industrial model. You can't get further from it. I think it's been one of the major human follies ever in history that we would think that we're going to feed the world from a single or a handful of corporations. It's not resilient, it's not dependable, it's not sustainable, it's not safe, it's abusive to people and abusive to animals.
One of the things I think that's most frustrating about the food system today is that food is simultaneously too cheap and too expensive. It is too cheap because we often exploit farmers, workers, and the environment, right? At the same time, it's too expensive. And a lot of people can't even make the choices to eat healthy because they don't have enough income. Good, healthy food shouldn't be too expensive for the very workers who might serve you that food or stock that food in the grocery store or process that meat.
Consumers don't even realize what their food is costing. They go to the grocery store, they buy food. Hey, they haven't paid the subsidy bill yet, which is a huge amount that they're having to pay to farmers to produce below cost of production. The government supports and pays subsidies and insurance on corn and soybeans and all the things that feed an industrial model of agriculture and that highly processed food industry that's the most profitable for big corporations and conglomerates. And meanwhile, we're not encouraging the production of good, healthy food.
I would say one of the places that perhaps might be the biggest issue for farmers who are thinking about alternatives is around crop insurance. And it's really important for them, by the way, with climate change, but we don't have those kinds of insurance programs for these farmers who are using diversified strategies to really manage their risks, but not getting any support from the federal government, reducing their motivation for trying other strategies that could reduce risk from climate change and so on.
What Patchwork is, we buy hogs from our producers on the hoof. We bring them into small independent meatpacking plants. 90% of Missouri hog producers have been put out of business in one generation. 85% of U.S. hog producers put out of business in one generation. And 50% of the U.S. pork industry is controlled by two foreign multinational corporations.
I have spent some time looking at concentration ratios, which are an imperfect measure of competition in a marketplace. The concentration ratio, a CR4 of 40% or more, indicates that the market is acting much more like a monopoly. So we see almost turkey, hogs, beef, all of these are greater than 40%. And there are serious questions being raised if we want to have all of these markets act like monopolies.
I mean, that's what antitrust is supposed to be guarding against. That's the purpose of one of the main purposes of our government, because if you enforce antitrust laws and you create more fairness out here and more distribution of wealth to farmers and consumers, then you don't need as much government for safety nets, because people don't need safety nets because they're getting paid a fair wage. The corporate model is the opposite of that.
The issue is that we had a serious reconsideration of antitrust law back in the 1980s. And we started to see a focus on efficiency and on price as the arbiter of if the market is competitive or not. But it's about what can we do to provide for farmer livelihoods, for worker livelihoods, for resilient businesses, for making sure everybody's fed. And those are the key issues that the food system has to address in a time of change, of climate change.
The agriculture is at the bottom of what has become a series of crises related from the climate all the way down to the soil. And as it is a part of the problem, it is also a part of a set of potential solutions. One set of alternatives is, in a sense, a scaling back down. It's a re-embedding of farming, agriculture in place, to where farming once again becomes producers and consumers seeing each other. We need help from the federal level all the way down to the national level to help set the policy context so that these folks can do the right things and be rewarded for it.
Equitable social relationships are really at the heart of making the food system work well for communities, for farmers, for workers, for the environment. Local systems are really an important component of that. Regional systems are an important component of that. And global systems can potentially play a role. But people in their communities need to be able to decide how they want to participate in the food system as a farmer, as an eater, as a worker. That's the important thing.